Hey, how are we gonna get by with money today? It was when my husband had kindly suggested we go to a fancy restaurant for a meal. As I stepped out to the restroom, I happened to overhear a conversation between our son, Michael, and his wife, Natalie, who were also there by chance. I was shocked to hear them talking about how they managed to get into the restaurant, as they couldn't afford such a place, and reached out to the door of the room to ask them about it. I was speechless after hearing their conversation. If we do this, we might not see Michael and his wife for a while. I immediately reported Michael and Natalie's conversation to my husband and the restaurant staff, and we decided to carry out a certain plan. When the final confirmation came from Natalie, both my husband and I nodded strongly in agreement. We don't mind. If you could cooperate, we would greatly appreciate it. And so, our counterattack against Michael and his wife began. My name is Sally Turner. I am 80 years old, enjoying a comfortable and enjoyable retirement life with my husband. We share a hobby of playing gateball together. Sometimes, I spend my days alone, while my husband meets with his friends, and I enjoy conversations with the owner at my favorite cafe. We were living our days leisurely. We have a son named Michael. He must be around 50 by now. He is married to Natalie, and they live a harmonious life together. Natalie is a homemaker. And they have no children. Having kids would just take away all our time together. I still want to enjoy our leisurely time together, Michael would say, arm in arm with Natalie. To Michael, Natalie seemed like his soulmate, completely smitten with her. Initially, I found their affection for each other endearing, and I could understand their desire for alone time. However, Natalie's next words made both me and my husband freeze. If we ever want one, we could just adopt instead of having our own. I don't want to go through the pain of childbirth, Natalie said with a laugh. I was appalled by her comment. And equally baffled by Michael's laughter in agreement. Perhaps they were not thinking straight. Ever since then, we haven't been very close with Michael and his wife, Natalie. I felt that getting any closer could potentially worsen our relationship. However, perhaps the distance we maintained was just right, as we never had any mother-in-law and daughter-in-law problems. There were no troubles in daily life, and I thought time would just peacefully flow on. While I was almost forgetting about this incident, it happened. When I was shopping at the supermarket, I felt an unusual amount of stares and, turning around, saw several neighbors looking at me and whispering among themselves. Hello, everyone. Are you all shopping too? Curious, I approached them without any worry, but for some reason, they greeted me awkwardly. As if avoiding me. It was so obvious that I felt it instinctively, raising questions in my mind. Why would that be? The answer was simple. Because I had coffee with those same people yesterday. Who could have imagined that things would change so drastically overnight? I wondered if I had done something wrong and stood there, puzzled, for a while. Then suddenly, from the direction of the cashier, a man's loud voice shouting in anger filled the store. So, how are you gonna take responsibility for this? The man's loud yelling made me flinch, and everyone's gaze shifted towards the commotion. The store, which until then was filled with lively conversations, fell silent in an instant. The man continued to shout, and the cashier's voice, full of apologies, was the only thing echoing. We'll replace it right away. Please, just wait a moment. I'm telling you, I don't need the stuff. Don't you get that? I'm saying lower the price. I turned to the cashier in shock at the man who was making such an impossible statement. I was dumbfounded by the man's unreasonable demands and turned to look towards the cashier. Michael? It was my son, Michael, who was causing the scene. As soon as I caught sight of him, I hurried over to him. Noticing me, Michael turned around and greeted me with a nonchalant smile, raising his hand in hello. Oh, hey, Mom. Shopping? His demeanor had completely changed from the shouting moments ago to a friendly smile. Michael has always been kind to his family and tough on others since he was young, but it seems like that trait has intensified now that he's an adult. No, it feels like he's gone off track as a person. Shopping? That's not the point. Why are you making a scene and complaining so loudly like a fool? Huh? What do you mean, fool? There was a bug in the cabbage at the store. I almost ate it without noticing. A complaint or two is only natural, right? It was clear he realized I wasn't just stopping by to chat. But it was intervening. Michael's attitude changed drastically upon this realization, confronting me with hostility and explaining the situation in an aggressive manner. His behavior was so overbearing that I felt bewildered that this was my own son. A bug or two is nothing. Can't you just get it replaced? And you've been shouting about it like this. Aren't you embarrassed? Why do I have to be scolded? It's this supermarket's fault, right? They say they'll replace it, but just seeing that cabbage made me feel so sick, I was shocked. Just replacing it isn't enough. The more I tried to intervene, the more Michael's words escalated. Contrary to my embarrassment from the painful stares of the people around, Michael seemed to want even more attention, continuing to shout. It must have been his strategy to make a big scene to pressure the store. If the commotion went on any longer, it could lead to police involvement. Thinking this, I handed the cabbage to a clerk for the time being, left my empty shopping basket with them, and forcibly dragged Michael out of the supermarket. Mom! What are you doing? What am I doing? That's my line. Making such a scene over a piece of cabbage, you're out of your mind? Although I managed to pull Michael outside, calming him down was nearly impossible. And I, too, was exploding with anger at how my son had turned out. A full-grown adult causing a scene in front of a supermarket was bound to draw attention, which I knew all too well. However, my anger didn't subside, and the argument with Michael continued. Really, what's the big deal if there's a bug in the cabbage? It's proof that it's fresh. Are you out of your mind? Then, Mom, you can go ahead and eat cabbage with bugs on it every day from now on. How long are you planning to keep up this ridiculous argument that sounds like it's between two school kids? It seemed like someone had caught wind of the commotion, probably waiting in a car nearby. Natalie emerged from Michael's car. Our argument stopped at the sight of her, and Michael, with a puppy dog look, hurried over to her. Sorry, Natalie. Was I late? This was the first time I felt disgusted by Michael's fawning over his wife. Until now, I hadn't thought much of it, but his earlier behavior had drastically lowered my opinion of him. Late? That's an understatement. Did you get the money at least? Natalie's tone was oddly authoritative towards Michael. I felt a discomfort I hadn't noticed before. Well, I got interrupted by Mom. What? You didn't fail to get it, did you? She looked down on Michael as if he were a servant, her tone rough. I was speechless at her behavior, so unlike the woman I thought I knew. I'll go back and try again. Forget it. How long do you expect me to wait? Sorry. Against Natalie's harshness, Michael seemed as small as a cat being scolded. I found no words to say. As I watched them in disbelief, Natalie turned her gaze sharply towards me. Long time no see, mother-in-law. It seems you've caused some unnecessary trouble. Her words were cold and irritating. I asked her to repeat, not understanding her meaning, which only seemed to irritate her further. She gave me a cold, disdainful look. Could you please not interfere in our matters from now on? Our livelihood is at stake, and it's really troublesome. Troublesome? You mean Michael's complaint earlier was? Before I could finish, Natalie's intimidating presence made me stop. I felt the fear one might have when stared down by a wild animal, and I stumbled over my words. I've told you, haven't I? Please, stop interfering from now on. I won't be responsible for what happens next. After being left with such threatening words, I left with a dejected Michael, and she left the scene. I stood alone in the parking lot, unable to do anything but watch Michael's car drive away. Could it be that their complaint was deliberate? As I watched them drive off, I thought back to my last exchange with Natalie. Unnecessary trouble, their livelihood is at stake. That means, could they be deliberately making complaints to swindle money? And Natalie's attitude and tone. What on earth? I was soon to find out the answer to these thoughts. The day after the conflict with Michael and his wife, a close neighbor visited my home, looking quite frantic. What's wrong? Why are you in such a hurry? It's terrible. Your daughter-in-law got into an argument with my husband. This neighbor is the wife of the cafe I frequent. I had been avoiding the neighbors I saw at the supermarket, feeling awkward, but it seems Michael and his wife had visited the cafe. And just like yesterday, they suddenly made a complaint, causing the master, her husband, to become furious. Michael filmed the ordeal, and Natalie provoked the master, nearly leading to a confrontation. I hurriedly called my husband, and we went to her cafe together. Look who I brought! What's going on with your son and his wife? They're causing trouble in my shop. We, who also have a rapport with the master, immediately apologized at the scene. We're truly sorry. We'll take them home right away. There you go again. Michael clicked his tongue, and Natalie muttered annoyingly. Despite my rising anger, I wanted to calm the situation more than anything. How dare you speak to your mother-in-law like that? The master, even in such a situation, showed concern for us. I was moved by his gesture, but it seemed to irritate Natalie. I married Michael, not anyone else. That's all that matters. More importantly, how dare you serve such awful food to customers? What did you say? You're still spouting that nonsense. My husband intervened as the master was about to lash out. We're deeply sorry. We will come back on another day to formally apologize for this rudeness. There are other customers here. Please, let's calm down for now. My husband was apologizing. Seeing this, the master's anger subsided, and he said we don't need to pay for now, just take Michael and Natalie home. So, my husband and I silently took them back to our house and into the living room. As soon as she sat on the sofa, Natalie sighed heavily, looking annoyed, while Michael seemed eager to please her, flustered. Do you understand what you've done? It was my husband who spoke quietly. His expression was blank, but his voice carried anger. I had never seen him like this in all the years we've been together. It was so frightening that I shivered next to him. What do you mean? I just complained about the taste, and I didn't want to pay for such awful food. Natalie replied, unfazed by the situation. Instead, she glared back, as if she was the one in the right. What you guys are doing is nothing short of being professional complainers. That cafe is a dear friend of ours, someone we owe a lot to. So what? That has nothing to do with us. Natalie retorted, her disdain for common sense making my husband's anger grow further. I knew giving in to anger here wouldn't solve anything. So I decided to step in. Natalie, you made Michael do the same thing at the supermarket yesterday, didn't you? Are you deliberately making complaints to save on the bill? I voiced my speculation. Yesterday and today. Their actions were clearly beyond normal bounds. They were picking faults just to get things for free. Their actions and words were so excessive that no other explanation seemed to fit. Hearing this, Natalie burst into laughter. Laughing so hard she was crying, and both my husband and I were taken aback. You're surprisingly smart, aren't you? Right? If there's a way to save money on meals, wouldn't anyone want to do it? Despite her scheme being guessed, Natalie didn't show any sign of disturbance. Instead, she continued to laugh as if nothing was wrong. It was insane. We were at a loss for words at her behavior, unable to think of anything else. Paying for food seriously is just too silly when there are ways to get it cheaper. I don't understand why everyone doesn't do it. Are you sane? You don't think that's criminal? Criminal, but you know, most places don't want to tarnish their reputation, so they hardly ever call the police. They usually just give in to our demands to keep things quiet. You're crazy. That way of thinking is not sane. My husband, who had been silent, couldn't help but be taken aback by her statement. And as if mocking him, Natalie continued. Maybe I am crazy. But, you see, I've been doing things bordering on criminal since I was young. It doesn't really bother me anymore. That's when we first learned that she used to be the leader of a ladies' gang. She started to tell us about her upbringing. I grew up without knowing my parents. Before I knew it, I was part of a gang, and this kind of life was normal for me. I don't think it's bad. Natalie spoke nonchalantly, while Michael looked up to her as if she was someone to be admired. I like strong-willed women like Natalie. If it's something Natalie wants, I'd do anything for her. Michael, Michael, speaking admiringly of Natalie, made me feel regret that my own child had grown up to be such an adult. So, if you keep pestering us, even if you're the in-laws, I won't hold back. Consider this your final warning. With that, Natalie stood up, and Michael followed her out. We tried to stop them, saying the conversation wasn't over, but our words didn't reach them. As we watched their backs, my husband and I stood dumbfounded. After that, I tried to contact my son and his wife by phone and visited their house, but I was turned away at the gate. My calls were rejected, and we were left estranged. Since then, my husband and I have been looked at with disdain by the neighbors. In the countryside, gossip spreads quickly, and being ignored during greetings becomes commonplace. I felt mentally drained, even suspecting that people whispering on the roadside were talking about me. I went to apologize to the cafe we caused trouble for, but I was told not to come back as long as we were associated with my son and his wife. I was filled with regret and cried myself to sleep that night. I was overwhelmed with emotions so strong I wanted to disappear, crying silently into my pillow. I ended up bedridden for several days, too afraid to go outside. My husband takes care of all the household chores. One day, my husband invited me out for a change of pace. A friend of mine who owns a restaurant wants us to visit. The restaurant was run by his friend and wasn't open to the general public. My husband had apparently mentioned me, knowing I was feeling down, and they extended an invitation to us. "You've been moping around too much, haven't you? It must be tough. Let's eat something delicious and cheer up." His gentle touch as he comforted me made me feel loved. I felt grateful once again for marrying him and decided to accept the invitation for a meal. I hadn't eaten much in the past few days, so my face had become gaunt. I tried to hide it with makeup, but my husband saw through it all, telling me I didn't have to force a smile. I felt inadequate but decided to go to the restaurant with him anyway. When we arrived, the owner and his wife welcomed us warmly. "Welcome. We've been expecting you. Long time no see. We appreciate your coming today. Please, make yourselves at home. Our young chefs make exquisite cuisine." The warm demeanor of the owner's wife and the solid presence of the owner. They put my mind at ease. I weakly smiled and nodded at their words. Concerned about my weakened state, the owner's wife took my hand and guided me through the restaurant. The interior was impeccably clean and exuded a sense of cleanliness. "Welcome. We've been expecting you." We were welcomed by the head chef with such vigor that lifted our spirits, which were feeling low. His enthusiasm was so infectious that we couldn't help but feel overwhelmed by it. "Today, I'll put extra effort into it and serve you delicious cuisine. The head chef's dishes are truly exquisite. Please, make yourselves comfortable and enjoy yourself." The one who smiled at us like that was a female server. Her gentle smile soothed my heart, and a smile naturally returned to my face. It was at that moment, while enjoying the delicious food, that I had almost forgotten about my son and his wife. "Hey, how are we going to manage our finances today?" As I was heading to the restroom, I heard a voice I recognized from somewhere, coming from one of the private rooms along the way. "After all, this is a place owned by Dad's acquaintances, right? It wouldn't be good to cause trouble here. Why are you getting cold feet? It's not like this place is any different from the ones we usually go to." "Well, yeah, but since when did you become such a wimp? Seeing spineless guys like you just ticks me off." From the tone and the way of speaking, I quickly realized it was my son and his wife in that room. How did they manage to get into this restaurant? Just as I was about to ask, I reached for the door handle. The content of their conversation drained the color from my face. And just as I felt my knees go weak. "Is something wrong? Are you feeling unwell?" The head chef, who had come to explain the dishes, was there. I couldn't explain the situation and just managed to convey that I wanted to return to the room. But I was so weak-kneed that walking properly was difficult. With just a word, the head chef seemed to understand my situation and offered some reassurance. "Sorry, perhaps this isn't appropriate for a lady, but..." Despite calling it an emergency, he lifted me up and carried me back to the room. Upon being hurried back to the room, I found my husband, wife, and the gentleman all gathered inside. Gasping for breath, the head chef appeared with me, surprising us both, while his wife hurriedly rushed to my side. The head chef helped me into a chair and discreetly led me into the room, trying not to attract attention. "What's wrong? Are you okay?" "My body is fine. But, you... Something terrible's happened with Michael and his wife." "What happened?" Seeing my pale face, my husband offered me a cup of tea to calm down for the moment. After taking a sip of tea and taking a deep breath to calm my mind and actions, I explained the conversation I had overheard and the situation from earlier. "Come to think of it, indeed, today, the Turner couple are dining here." "What?" As we talked, it suddenly dawned on me that we had brought Michael and his wife to this restaurant when they got married. At that time, the owner had made us membership cards, assuming they were our sons. So, that's how they managed to come here for a meal. "I'm sorry. It's all my fault for meddling." "Why are you apologizing? We're the ones who should be apologizing. More importantly, what should we do? It wouldn't be good if they caused a scene in the restaurant. As we all fretted over the situation, the head chef proposed something. How about this? Upon hearing his suggestion, we felt reluctant but didn't see any other choice. But wouldn't that inconvenience you, chef? Don't worry about it. If I can help you ladies, a little inconvenience like this is nothing. With a hearty laugh, the dependable head chef reassured us, and both my husband and I smiled in return, albeit with furrowed brows. But if we go through with this, we probably won't see our son and his wife for a while. The wife, with a stern look, confirmed our determination. Exchanging glances, my husband and I nodded subtly. It's okay. If you're willing to help, we'd like to ask for your cooperation. Are you sure about this? Yes. We can't stop those kids ourselves. Please, we're counting on you. After being reassured by the owner once again, my husband and I both bowed deeply. And thus, our retaliation against our son and his wife began. Hey, get the manager over here. Afterward, as expected, Michael's wife started shouting in the restaurant, and customers began to peek out from the private rooms, wondering what the commotion was about. I'm the head chef here. The head chef rushed over and asked my son and his wife what was wrong. There was a hair in the soup they served us. How are you going to make this right? We're paying good money here, so take responsibility. As usual, my son's wife started complaining. Her behavior stirred up the other customers, and worried voices could be heard from the staff. A hair, you say? However, the head chef remained calm and composed, addressing the situation with a firm attitude. Upon seeing the soup with a hair in it, he seemed to notice something odd. This hair doesn't belong to any of our staff. In the face of the chef's calm analysis, my son and his wife stared at him with a startled expression. The surrounding customers, upon hearing his words, became intrigued, and everyone in the restaurant focused on the interaction between my son's couple and the head chef. On what basis are you saying that? We don't have any staff with dyed hair in our restaurant. Furthermore, a hair this long wouldn't belong to any female staff either. What are you talking about? My son's wife became flustered by the chef's calm observation. However, to support my son's wife, my son himself started to protest. Are you accusing us, the customers? Not at all. However, if this was intentionally placed by a customer, that would be a big problem, wouldn't it? Shut your big mouth until you have evidence we did it. Once evidence is presented, you're okay with me speaking up? Now, the wife, who had been listening, intervened, followed by the husband showing up. With everyone maintaining a firm demeanor, my son's couple looked around in dismay. What you're doing is a clear crime, you know? It might be wise to consider your position before causing any more trouble, don't you think? What's with you guys since earlier? Is this how you treat customers in a high-class establishment? You're not customers or anything like that. As my son's couple persisted without giving up, the husband directed his words at them. Upon recognizing a familiar voice, the two of them turned towards me and my husband, wearing puzzled expressions. It's you two again? What are you doing here? That's our line. This is our dear friend's restaurant. It's about time you stopped causing a scene. You call this a disgrace? There was a hair in the food. This is a legitimate protest. It's absurd to complain about it. And we know that you intentionally put the hair in there. With that, I pointed to the ceiling of the restaurant. There, a black, round fixture was installed. What do you think that is? You don't know? That's a security camera. So what? With a condescending tone towards my ignorant son's wife, she expressed her anger. Despite giving me a defiant look and attitude while glaring at me, she still didn't seem to grasp the existence of the camera. It was my son who first realized the situation. Hey, isn't that? What are you talking about? Why are you suddenly turning pale? It seems Michael has noticed. He understands what the security camera means. So, what about it? My son's wife, frustrated by the exchange, showed disgust. Seeing is believing. Thinking it would be quicker to show rather than tell, my husband opened the door and pointed to the ceiling. There, a security camera was indeed installed. That camera can view in all directions, 360 degrees, right? Understanding what this meant, even my son's wife seemed to catch on. With her mouth opening and closing like a fish, her face gradually turned pale. If you're still not convinced, we're willing to go as far as DNA testing that hair or whatever you want. We're prepared to fight to the end. As if to drive the point home, a husband started to threaten them with a smile on his face. And as this unfolded, the sound of sirens could be heard from outside the restaurant. What? Oh, looks like our ride's here. Ride? My son's wife, now with a pale face at my words, reacted. In response, with a cold smile on my face, I uttered coldly, "It's time for you two to part ways for a while." What's going on? As my son's couple struggled to comprehend the situation, the police appeared. They surrounded them and began to inquire about the situation. Is it you two? You're the ones causing obstruction of business and attempting to falsely accuse others of extortion. Obstruction of business? It's them. They've been making baseless complaints to the restaurant, trying to get free meals. Interrupting my son's attempt to justify himself, I explained the situation to the police. Although my son and his wife resisted upon hearing this, the officer warned them that further resistance would only worsen their charges, and they immediately quieted down. For now, let's discuss this calmly at the station. Shall we go together? What? We haven't done anything wrong. Give it up. The police have already been briefed on the situation. They know all about your attempts to fabricate lies and bring down this restaurant. And your despicable acts so far. You'll be given a proper hearing. That's right. We'll listen to your side of the story for as long as it takes. Now, shall we? With a smile, the police officer calmly suggested, but his smile conveyed a sense of intimidation. Even my hot-tempered son's wife had no choice but to comply quietly. Then, we'll take you with us. Thank you very much. And as we watched my son's couple being escorted away, the restaurant erupted in applause. That was awesome. Great acting, chef. I was sweating bullets, thinking I might get caught. Grateful for the warm words of the regular customers, my husband and I couldn't help but feel thankful. Thank you so much. Not at all. If this brings peace of mind to you, we're more than satisfied. But the chef's suggestion turned out to be right. If it's the kind of thing they would do, you can usually figure it out. Laughing as he spoke, the chef's confidence left both me and my husband in awe. That suggestion from the chef at the time. It was to shake up my son's couple. We do have female employees with light brown hair, and while the camera is indeed a surveillance camera, it doesn't provide a 360-degree view. I was wondering what to do if things went south. It was a gamble, but we managed to handle it well. And it's all thanks to you and everyone's response. Thank you so much. Warm voices from the restaurant reassured us, saying not to worry. The staff explained the situation to the customers, and everyone rallied behind us. We had asked them to help in case my son's couple caused trouble, and everyone acted like actors, just as we requested. Now, let's resume our enjoyable meal. Today, it's on the house. Everyone rejoiced at the generosity of the husband, and we were able to have a good time. Afterward, my son's couple was sued by the restaurant and faced a hefty compensation claim. They were taken to court, and it was highly likely they would receive a prison sentence. Moreover, it was revealed that they had posted a video on social media of a previous altercation with the owner of a nearby cafe. This led to another lawsuit against them, and their reputation became so tarnished that everyone in town knew about it. Naturally, it became difficult for my son's couple to live in the town, and they left town as if fleeing. My husband and I tried various ways to repay the cafe and the high-end restaurant we were indebted to, and eventually decided to use social media to highlight the strengths of both eateries. With the help of acquaintances who were knowledgeable about the web, our efforts paid off, and both businesses flourished. We managed to reconcile with our neighbors, and now we can once again go out for tea as a couple. Since then, we have severed ties with my son's couple, and my husband and I are still living happily even though we are over 80 years old. We're so content every day that we hardly even think about what happened to my son's couple. This incident served as a stark reminder that seeking rewards without effort leads to punishment.